I'm Anne Dawson and I'm here today to talk to Michael Robson, the CEO of Andrews Property Group, about Brexit and the effect that Brexit is likely to have on the property market. Morning, Michael. Last time we met, you were pretty clear, yourself and your colleagues, that we would remain within the EU. You were wrong.
Morning, Anne. Yes, well, I have to admit that I was wrong. Along with half the country, I think we got to the result that we didn't expect, and I think we were surprised, genuinely surprised by the outcome. And yes, I was wrong, but here we are, and we'll talk about it.
Now, you also said that if there were a Brexit, it was unlikely, but if there were, then any shock would be very short term. Are you still saying that's the case, despite this really chaotic world we find ourselves in now?
Yes, I'm still confident that although the result was unexpected, I still believe that the interruption to business as normal will be relatively short, and that very slowly over the next 2 or 3 weeks the market will reassert itself and we will get back to business as normal.
I can hear a clamour of, you would say that, wouldn't you? You're a senior figure in the property business. Are you not just guilty of talking up the market?
Well, that's what I'm paid to do. I have to admit that you would be surprised if I was incredibly negative about the market. But honestly, this is what I believe. And the reason I believe that is firstly 30 to 40 years experience in this market, and secondly, just a really thorough understanding of what drives the market. We are, after all, still short of property, and we have lots of people who need a home or need somewhere to rent or somewhere to buy. And therefore I think the fundamentals that drive the market haven't changed, and I think given time they will reassert themselves.
Okay, so let's go on to talk about some detail. First of all, let's talk about purchases. So if I have an offer on a property, we also talked last time about opportunity. Is this my opportunity to withdraw my offer and come back in with a lower offer?
It's a very good question. I would think it's absolutely correct that you should give some thought to it. I wouldn't recommend withdrawing the offer because I think there will be plenty of other buyers standing behind you in the queue and who may want to jump in. I would have thought it was quite a reasonable request to talk to your agent and ask whether there is room for some small renegotiation. However, I think a buyer would have to be aware that that may lead to the vendor wanting to put the property back on the market and have the confidence to go for the original price. So although I wouldn't strongly recommend that as a course of action, I could understand why some buyers might try it, but I think they'd have to do so with care.
It's brutal stuff, isn't it? I mean, this is seizing an opportunity by vendors, purchasers, and the agents themselves to make a fast buck out of a really difficult situation.
I would hope not. I still believe that the market sets the price. Obviously it will depend, if we're talking here about buying and selling, as to whether the vendor wants to sell and how quickly they want to sell. I mean, he or she who has time has power, and therefore if they've got the time to wait, they could afford to rebuff a lower offer, and they could say, no, I have the time to put it back on the market. If they're anxious to make a sale, they may give way a little, but then I don't think that's any different to any other market conditions. It all depends on the demand for the property and on whether or not there are any other properties available of a similar nature to that buyer.
So generally speaking then, for vendors, would you recommend patience or realism, a little bit of a drop?
I think it's always important to be realistic. Everything is determined by the vendor's timescale. As I've said already, do they have the time to wait? So in which case I would recommend them to be patient. On the other hand, if grabbing the opportunity to complete the sale now is important to them because of timescales, then possibly one could renegotiate a little. And I think some of that may be determined by their ongoing arrangements. Are they buying another property, and how much time have they got?
Okay. I can hear people now doing sums in their heads, because these things are very close to the margins for all of us, aren't they, when we buy and sell. So if you had to put a figure on it, what do you think the percentage drop is likely to be across the housing market for this period of time?
Relatively, in the short term, relatively small. I think we may be talking about as little or 2 or 3%, and I think that depending on how quick certainty comes back in terms of politically, and market and interest rates, all those important things that I'm sure we'll turn to, I think that even that reduction may be relatively short-lived.
Okay, so it's interesting. I mean, this is what you said when we met before. You're saying this again now, short-lived. What are we talking? Are we talking a year? Are we talking a period of a few years, a few months?
These are always difficult to predict, aren't they? I mean, here we're dealing with several things at once. We've had an unexpected outcome to the referendum. We have a new Prime Minister, we have a new Cabinet, we will have new policies. All these things will play their part. Interest rates may go down, they may stay the same. So there is going to be some delay, but I am relatively confident that the market will bounce back very much more quickly, perhaps, than people expect.
Within months?
Putting a time scale, I would say 4 to 6 weeks.
As quickly as that?
I think so. The market can respond very, very quickly. It's sentiment driven. It's not unlike the stock market. The stock market is a little bit more liquid, and it's more easily measured, and it's available as an index every day in the newspaper, so people can see it, so it's more transparent. But the property market is very much like that, and for local agents valuing properties every day of the week, they too can respond very quickly to the changes in the market. So I think they will be able to see how many valuations are becoming available every day, how many new properties are coming to the market every day. We're measuring the number of applicants that register with us every day, and we will see very quickly whether the applicants are coming back to the market, and if they do, acting in the best interest of our vendors, we will reflect that in the valuation. So it is actually quite a quick response.
So you're an influential person in the property world. You and your colleagues are all potentially saying the same thing, I'm guessing. You're probably not too far different. So if all of you talk about a short-term blip, 4 to 6 weeks, what if the effect of that is that everybody says, right, okay, well, I'm going to take my house off the market for this period, or I'm going to seize this opportunity during this period, and we get these sort of highs and lows for this period of time? What does that do to the market?
Well, it would distort it. I don't think it's very likely. It's hard enough to get people to think along the same lines at any time. So I don't think that's realistically going to be the case. I'm sure that vendors are watching the internet, reading the news feeds like everyone else. I'm sure they're interpreting events. The property market is remarkably local. It is driven more by access to schools, access to railway stations, local, which side of the road the sun falls on, whether the garden is south facing or north facing, the reputation for certain roads to sell well, how easy it is to get into town from there. These are all the real local issues, and these are the things that drive desirability and drive value. And I think these are far, far greater impact on the market than what happens in London or what happens with politics. In other words, the old phrase, location, 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 will drive value and will drive the saleability of any property, and that's never changed.
And what about the time of year? Because we're a couple of weeks from the end of term. Is that significant? I know there are times of the year where it's more buoyant than other times.
Okay, so very good question. The letting and the residential sales market have slightly different seasons. So turning to letting firstly, there's no doubt that the what we call the third quarter, from June to October, is the busiest time of the year for the letting industry. I think this is because of students getting ready for the university year, so that tends to drive how busy things are. From a residential sales point of view, do you know something, Anne? A number of years ago, I think the market used to be more seasonal. Everybody got their properties ready for the March, April market. So we used to talk about the spring selling season. I think it's less seasonal these days, but there is still a seasonal nature. So the market really gets busy from March through to July, August. You get a bit of a dip when families go on holiday, if indeed you live in a family-dominated area. And then it tends to pick up again quite quickly once the children come back to go to school. So 5th, 6th of September, the market picks up again. There is another difference, which is the market used to go quiet before Christmas. We don't see that anymore now. We tend to see a pretty level and consistent market right through up until and including Christmas. Interesting to reflect, for instance, if you look at the professional valuations done by our valuers, Landmark, they are just as busy in December trying to get the valuations for the lenders done on time as they are any time of the year. In fact, there's quite a rush on just before Christmas.
Okay, let's move on to borrowing. So what do you expect is going to happen to interest rates, and how's that going to affect people borrowing money?
I'm slightly wary of forecasting with you now, Anne, because I got it wrong last time. So I don't want to fall into the trap of making too strong a forecast. My feeling is interest rates have never been as low. They have run much lower for much longer than anyone in our industry would have ever expected. You know, you and I will have lived through periods where interest rates were 15, 17, 18%. I remember having a mortgage at 18% and worrying that I'd never be able to pay it. These days, probably average rate being paid by borrowers around 3.5%, 4%. So these are historically low rates, and I think that it wouldn't surprise me if those rates remain now quite low for at least another year or two. Whether or not this week the Bank of England will lower the base rate by another 0.25%, I wouldn't like to forecast. That will all depend on whether they think the economy needs the stimulus. If they do, then that may bring forward a few more attractive rates. But let's say this, the trend in the last few weeks has been downwards. There are some of the best 5-year and 10-year fixed rates that we have ever seen. So I would say whether you are moving or not, it might be a very good time to look for a remortgage to see whether you can grab some of this cheap money while you can. And it seems to be a bet at 2.5, 2.7, 3% for 5 or 10 years is an extremely good bet.
It's a great time for first-time buyers.
Yes, it is, and I'm glad you've raised that, because I think you asked me about opportunities last time, and I said, well, I did think this presented some opportunities. So if I am right and house prices fell back just a small amount, I think that would help first-time buyers, and indeed the lenders are very anxious to lend to first-time buyers. That's a market they are going to focus on. So you will see some very, very attractive rates to first-time buyers coming out over the next few weeks, I think. The lenders want their market share, so it is a competitive market to lend in, and I think you'll see some quite attractive new products.
So what about families trading up? So the family living in the 2-bedroom house who are ready to move into the big family home, is there an opportunity for them as well?
I think so, Anne. Yes, I think so. I mean, the market most of the volume of the market is in the middle market, in families trading up and trading down. I think there's several things here. Firstly, I think there may become more choice. I think there may be a larger choice of properties become available over the next few weeks. The interest rates will be very attractive, so I think they'll get some of the best deals they could possibly have got in the last 20 years, frankly. So it's very affordable. I think the lenders will also look at their loan-to-value ratios, and I think they may be prepared to lend a little bit more than they were perhaps earlier on in the year when there was an expectation of a boom market. So loan-to-value ratios, very attractive interest rates, and perhaps a little bit more choice in the marketplace.
I'm sure that landlords are going to be feeling anxious now. We're leaving something we've known for a long, long time. What do you think the likely impact of Brexit is going to be on legislation surrounding property letting?
I don't think there'll be any change. I don't think Brexit itself will have any major impact on the legislation around the rental and lettings market. There were anyway some changes in the pipeline, and I think it's likely they will go through, but I don't think Brexit in itself will have an impact. In fact, if anything, what I'd like to believe is that the future government will try and make things easier for business in Britain, and I'm sure that on the minds of ministers, the removal of red tape, Britain being open for business, simplicity will be their drivers, and so hopefully that will help landlords.
And one of your themes throughout this has been the shortage of housing stock.
Yes.
Is there anything in the Brexit that is likely to, you talk about removing red tape as well, kickstart housing development and ease that position?
I don't think Brexit in itself will affect the supply of land, the supply of planning permission, and how many houses are going to be built. I think from a broadly political point of view, I think what may happen is we may become more of a can-do country, perhaps a little bit less hiding behind what happens in Europe to set our legislation. And there's no doubt at all that something is going to have to give in terms of planning and land. We need 250,000 plus new homes a year, and we're just not building enough. So if we are going to have any hope of giving people reasonable homes to live in, whether they're rented section, private rental section, fund managed rental section, or properties for purchase, we are going to have to find a way of building more homes. And there's lots and lots of useful, sensible suggestions that I think need really serious consideration to unblock this. And I just hope that perhaps with a more can-do attitude, politicians will take the risk of being bold and tackle some of these problems.
I'd like to end on something that you've raised earlier on, which is the new world, the new government that we're facing in this country. So in a few hours' time, we'll have a new Prime Minister, a woman. She will choose her new cabinet, which may be a very different looking cabinet, moving away from a particular type of male educated in the private sector, perhaps, to a more female cabinet. Do you think that in itself is something that's going to make a big difference?
I think it's very difficult to know. I think I've already given you some insight into my own views, which is I would hope that Britain's going to become a simpler place to do business in. I'm hoping we're going to have a can-do attitude. I'm hoping we're going to use the opportunity to renegotiate some of our statutes and legislation to make things simpler. I do believe that our new Prime Minister will be a no-nonsense, straightforward, straight-speaking type of Prime Minister. I think strong leadership is always helpful to business. Business is built upon a certain sense of confidence and certainty so that they can make investments and make plans. Speaking for Andrew's Property Group, we have big plans going forward, and I need to have some certainty to make those decisions and make those investments. And I don't think that's any different to any other business, big or small. And so I think that our politicians, our new Prime Minister will understand that, and I think the sooner they can start to pass messages out that talk about certainty and confidence going forward, I do believe that will have a very positive impact on the business environment in this country, and that's good for jobs, that's good for pay.
So we have a new Prime Minister, we have a new Cabinet. We're in a very, very different world from the one we were in, a very short time ago. Overall, what do you think the effect of this change will be on the property market?
We've already talked about how long this any interruption might take, and I've already said I think that it will be relatively short period, 4 to 6 weeks. So my expectation really for quarter 3 and quarter 4, the summer and the autumn market, is that I think that it will rebound, possibly quicker. One of the things we've all become aware of is that one day is a long time in politics. I think 1 week may become quite a long time in the property market. The property market can rebound very quickly, and I think that we might be quite surprised how quickly the market bounces back in the summer and in the autumn. There are a lot of people who are very, very interested in buying and selling, and I think as soon as they see some confidence returning to the economy and some confidence returning in leadership, I think the market will bounce back.